How does every NFL team rank on the offensive line? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch back once again with another NFL rankings video live on BR, also on YouTube, The Bottom Line View, here to rank every single NFL offensive line from the worst offensive line in the NFL, number 32, to the best O-line in football entering the 2024 NFL season. The offensive line is always one of those positions that really acquires chemistry. It acquires cohesion. It acquires more than individual talent. It's always difficult to project rookies to the NFL level when it comes to the tackles, guards, or centers. And a real good offensive line can not only run block, but pass block. They are balanced. They feature a cohesion that in big games comes together and allows their quarterback to succeed. So in this video, it's my opinion on the offensive lines in the NFL. The worst to the best. And cohesion matters. Scheme matters. The individual talents matter at all positions. I do not really rank any individual position, a tackle over a center. I don't really care about that. I just care about how good are the players. Have they played with each other before? How has it looked previously? And do I believe in the scheme? And does that elevate the offensive line? Because a lot of offensive line play right now is about the scheme that they play. So let's begin, guys, at number 32. You let me know in the comments section, the live chat, how you feel about my list, especially when it comes to your team. Do you think I accurately evaluated your offensive line? This is one of those positions that I feel like there's a pretty clear top 5 or 6 in the NFL, and there's a pretty clear bottom 5 or 6. And then everything in between is pretty subjective, but I'll try to give my best opinion on why your team lands at their position. So let's begin. At number 32, the worst offensive line in the NFL today is the New York Giants. The New York Giants are the worst offensive line, in my opinion. Last season, they had the 32nd graded pass blocking unit and the 30th graded run blocking unit in the NFL. Now, I'll be bringing these grades up according to PFF just as a reference point for each offensive line so you guys understand where they were at last year, okay? Andrew Thomas is an elite player at left tackle. He's absolutely phenomenal, and he did miss a good portion of last year. But other than Andrew Thomas, and now we've even seen Jermaine Illuminor go down in practice, who I actually really like Jermaine Illuminor. He played for the Patriots. He's played for the Ravens. He's played for the Raiders. He's been a highly underrated right tackle in the NFL, and he could even play guard. That's where I believe he initially began his career with the Ravens. But if he's seriously injured, that would eliminate one of those kind of safety blanket players that I thought they actually brought in that might actually increase the depth and the ability of this offensive line. But biggest reason I don't like this line is really watching them last year. They haven't really, in my opinion, greatly improved this unit. They still have Evan Neal starting at right tackle, who has become an absolute bust at the NFL level. I thought he was going to be good. Okay, I thought he was going to be good. He has been nothing short of absolutely horrific. So he is a problem. Then you've got John Michael Schmitz, who there was no center that was graded lower in the NFL last year than John Michael Schmitz. Now, he is entering his second year. He was a pretty high draft pick, but last year he was absolutely horrendous. Okay, Jermaine Illuminor, I don't know what's going on with him. Is he guard? Is he right tackle? Now, I've seen his best play at right tackle. Right? If he supplants Mr. Evan Neal at right tackle, that actually, I think, helps this offensive line ranking potentially. But if he's playing guard, I haven't really seen him play that position in a while. So I don't really know. And then you got John Runyon, who's just been an average, replaceable level guard for the Packers. They clearly didn't really want him back. So I don't really necessarily know if that's a good thing. Right? The Packers are very good at evaluating offensive line talent. So for me, I just look at this line and I don't love the depth. Aaron Stinney is also a member of this offensive line. I did like his play in Tampa Bay, but overall, we've seen this offensive line be one of the worst units in the league for like the past 3, 4, 5 years. They haven't really increased their level of play. They did change their offensive line coach, I do believe, and I do like that offensive line coach. I think he was the former Raiders coach, and then before that, he was under Dante Scarnecchia in New England. So I don't mind the coach, and I do think that will help. But overall, there's just not a lot of talent outside of the left tackle, Andrew Thomas, and we've just consistently seen this line not be able to open up holes in the run game, not be able to pick up blitzes, constant pressure, like almost to the level of it's unplayable at the quarterback position or unplayable on offense. I really just keep having nightmares of those Cowboys games that they played. So the Giants at number 32. At number 31, perhaps a pretty shocking entry. That's the New Orleans Saints at number 31. And the reason they're at number 31, Ryan Ramczyk is going to be on the PUP list early in the year. So if you have Ryan Ramczyk, by far their best offensive lineman, on the PUP list and not available to play early in the year, your offensive line is basically Eric McCoy, some replaceable players, and a rookie. And that it's not good, okay? Especially with Derek Carr behind it. And Derek Carr under pressure, we know, is a significantly worse quarterback. But they did draft Talesi Fuaga, and I liked him, but I liked him more at right tackle. And my kind of problem is that he might be playing left tackle when Ryan Ramczyk comes back, and he might be playing, I don't know, like if he's playing left tackle, I guess that's maybe he could do it, but I feel like he was probably more of a guard or a tackle, a right tackle in the NFL level. So I'm not certain he's going to be able to be that blindside protector at the NFL level. So I actually think his evaluation maybe dips for me just slightly based on where he's probably going to play. Cesar Ruiz has never really been that good. I'm not really even aware of who their left guard is, to be honest. Eric McCoy is a good player, top 10 center in the NFL. But with Ryan Ramczyk out, that basically means that they have a right tackle playing left tackle, Trevor Penning probably starting on the line, maybe. Maybe they move Fuaga to right tackle and they play Trevor Penning at left tackle early in the year. But Trevor Penning was like a disaster last year for the Saints, and they had to sit him. So it's a bad offensive line. Last year, they ranked 26th in pass block, 25th in run block. They could not run the ball to save their lives. And this year, it could even be worse if Ryan Ramczyk misses like 4+ weeks. So I just don't see any cohesion here. I don't see any, great coaching to really elevate the unit. And I see a bunch of below average starters with young players that haven't proven anything at the NFL level. So that's why I have the Saints at number 31. Not a fan of this offensive line at all. At number 30, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are at number 30 after grading as the 28th pass blocking unit and the 15th run blocking unit. Now, they did change quite a few players on this line. Damian Lewis ended up leaving and signing with the Carolina Panthers. He might have been their best run blocker on this line and their best offensive lineman in general. So losing him is a big loss. Their tackles are still pretty young. I believe entering year 3, Abraham Lucas on the right, Charles Cross on the left. Charles Cross, first round pick. Lucas a little bit later. I think he was like a 3rd round pick. They've had up and down moments throughout their careers. I'd expect Charles Cross to maybe take a step forward this year with the new offensive scheme being more pass oriented and more downfield oriented. I could see him actually playing pretty well this year. Lincoln Tomlinson, they signed as like a replacement for Lewis. I personally believe he's washed. I haven't seen anything from him since leaving San Francisco to make me believe that he's any good. They have kind of a mixture of centers. It could be Christian Haynes, the rookie. It could be Nick Harris out of Cleveland. It could be Olu, who they already had on the roster from last year, hasn't played too many snaps, so there's not too much recognition of what he is at the NFL level. And Anthony Bradford at right guard is not my personal favorite right guard either. So their interior is very, very weak, especially from a pass blocking standpoint. and their tackles are still young and relatively unproven. Now, there is, the tackles have played together before, although they're on the opposite sides of the line. Some of these guys have been in the building, and I don't mind the depth that they do have with Christian Haynes coming on board, Nick Harris being signed, and George Fant being signed. That's a good swing tackle. So I do think they have solid depth, like a rotation of about 8 NFL type of players, so that if they do lose one, they won't be in such bad shape like maybe the Giants. But I do still feel like the overall talent, they do not feature an elite player. They probably don't even feature like an above average player, really. Maybe Charles Cross, right? But again, this is a poor pass blocking unit and a team that features Geno Smith, a pocket quarterback. They're going to need to be much better in the interior because that gave Geno a ton of issues last year. So yeah, this is the biggest weakness on a team that I think is actually pretty darn talented otherwise at number 30. At number 29, the Washington Commanders offensive line. Now, shockingly, I don't know what Pro Football Focus was watching, but they graded the Commanders as the 15th best pass blocking unit and the 9th best run blocking unit. Again, grain of salt. I don't know. But Sam Howell obviously got absolutely annihilated last year. I think he got sacked like 60 times, something like that. They did allow the most sacks in the NFL. Now, sacks, in my opinion, is more of a quarterback stat than it is an offensive line stat. So that's why I don't just use sacks as a measure. Because if you watched Peyton Manning or Dan Marino before him or Tom Brady or Drew Brees, any of these guys that would get rid of the ball quickly. Nowadays, Josh Allen had the lowest sack rate in the NFL. Why? Better quarterbacks, they rather get rid of the ball or they scramble and they're able to, get rid of the pressure by themselves, right? So offensive lines aren't the onus of just sacks alone. So I don't use that stat necessarily. So the Commanders, I do think, again, another season where they have a bunch of average borderline starter type of players that are featured on their offensive line. Like Nick Allegretti, they signed from the Chiefs. He started in the Super Bowl. He played really well for the Chiefs late in the season when they needed him to step up for Joe Thuney. Sounds like a good signing on the surface. They did the same thing with Andrew Wiley out of Kansas City. They love signing Chief players, right? But the thing is, Andy Reid, that offensive line, that system, that scheme, it elevates offensive linemen. Then they go to Washington and they're just not the same individually, and they can't seem to find that fit with that offensive line. Now, maybe, perhaps Cliff Kingsbury, new offense, perhaps a new look on the offensive line with the protections and or the running scheme. But to me, like, this is just a line that doesn't have really any great players. I think Sam Cosmi had a really good year last year. I believe he was top 5 graded at the guard position. He is like in his prime now. Tyler Biadasz was signed from Dallas. That should at least solidify a relatively weak center position from a year ago. He was a top 15 graded center in the NFL. Cornelius Lucas is okay, although he's had up and down seasons. Last year, he didn't really play as much as he did the years before. And Brandon Coleman was also drafted, I think, out of TCU as a 3rd round pick as the 6th offensive lineman in the rotation. I just don't think they have a lot of big names on this line. Not a lot of guys that really say, wow, that guy's awesome at guard or that guy's great at center. They have a couple guys that maybe, Tyler Biadasz should help. Nick Allegretti maybe could improve their guard position. But I don't really see a significant jump this year from what we saw last year from the Commanders. At number 28, the New England Patriots offensive line. They graded as the 29th pass blocking unit, but they were good in the run game, 12th in the run game. So the offensive line for the Patriots is weird because when you actually look at their individual grades, like from Pro Football Focus, Cole Strange was top 26, Sidy Sow was top 25, Dave Andrews is a top 10 center, Michael Onwenu is a very good right tackle. The real position of like, wow, that's not good is left tackle. They signed Okafor, Chuk Okafor. I believe that's how you say his name, out of Pittsburgh. I've never known how to say his name. He's been a starter for the Steelers for about 3 years, I want to say, and he has never been very good. Now, he does have like good feet, but physically speaking, run game speaking, a very underwhelming player at times. He's shown flashes of ability to be a high-end starter in the NFL, but like very few. So pretty much you know what you're getting, which is a low-end left tackle, and the Steelers were desperately trying to find a way to replace him at the end of the day, and that was on one of the worst offensive lines in football. Plus, I think, he's been playing more of the right side than the left side throughout his NFL career. He hasn't really played the left tackle position since college football. So that is definitely not a good sign. Now, they also have Caden Wallace, who they drafted, I think, out of Penn State. He could potentially play right tackle, and they could slide Michael Onwenu inside to guard. The Patriots are always one of those organizations that just tries to find their best 5 players no matter which position. Nick Leverett was also signed out of Tampa. I don't mind him either. He played some games protecting Tom Brady in the past. But this line kind of comes down to the health of Cole Strange. How much does Sidy Sow take a step forward? Is Dave Andrews still the same player? Where does Michael Onwenu play? Right? He's their best offensive lineman by a long shot, but he's better at guard than he is at tackle. That's definitely certain. But the thing is, they don't really necessarily have the tackles to be able to slide him into guard. So you could worry a little bit more about him in pass protection against those finesse speed rushers, because his game is more power and it's straight ahead. And also you have to wonder, okay, they're going to be bringing in more of a Cleveland Browns scheme, so will their offensive line really mesh, because they were previously in more of a power heavy scheme? So yeah, there's a lot of questions about this line. But that being said, as I said at the beginning, they have the individual talent. Sidy Sow is really good as a rookie. Cole Strange has shown flashes when he's not injured. Michael Onwenu just got paid a very nice contract. He is definitely worth it. They've got the individual talents. Dave Andrews has been a borderline Pro Bowler for 10 years, it feels like. But the cohesion, the coming together, how this fits within the scheme, all questions about the Patriots' offensive line. At number 27, Jacksonville's offensive line. Pass blocking 21st, run blocking 31st from a year ago. Jacksonville was really bad on the offensive line last year. They had some injuries, but they also caused an injury of Trevor Lawrence. And I just think they're bad because they've continuously tried to address this position throughout the draft and free agency. And almost every single player that they have drafted or they have signed has been a disappointment in some way, shape, or form. Like Cam Robinson has been their starting left tackle since he got there, and he has never been very good. He has never been a great player, above average. He's been serviceable, fine, whatever. Athletic, certainly has the upside, you would think. Physically, I think he was the first pick in the second round once upon a time or something like that, but he's never become anything special. You wonder why they haven't replaced him yet. Antoine Harrison, they drafted late last year in the first round. And, maybe he takes a jump this year. He was very young, right? He needed a lot of technical refinement, but very good feet, very good movement capabilities. We'll see if he takes a step forward. But he was not good as a rookie. Not good. Ezra Cleveland was a nice little trade. They added him out of Minnesota. The Vikings traded him to the Jags, and that kind of beefed up their interior a little bit. Alongside Mitch Morse and Brandon Scherf, they do have veterans that are, solidified at the NFL level as good caliber players, but they're not what they once were. This is not Mitch Morse and Brandon Scherf, who was an all-pro caliber player in Washington. This is not the same level of those players. They're not the same. They've declined. Now, they do have Walker Little, Luke Fortner, some guys that have played NFL starting snaps as backups, which I don't mind. And they should be better this year. There's really no reason, especially with Mitch Morse at the center position. That leadership, that experience should bring together this offensive line, the ability to kind of get into the right checks on the line and be able to read protections that way from a veteran experienced center. That should really help them, because previously they were featuring the last 2 years, probably the worst center play overall in the NFL. So that could really help them. But I'm not a fan of their tackles really until proven otherwise. And Morse and Scherf are old. I do like Cleveland, so still questions there. Given their performance last year, I'm not exactly sure that their coaching is great either. So at number 27, Jacksonville. At number 26, a team that I don't think has great individual talent, but their scheme really upgrades them, and that's the Miami Dolphins, 16th best in pass blocking, 19th best in run blocking last year. They were actually the most efficient team in not allowing sacks last season, and that's because of how their scheme operates. Tua gets rid of the ball so fast that he does not take sacks, and that's thanks to Mike McDaniel's, scheming up of Tyreek Hill in motion, Jalen Waddle, etc. So it really protects the offensive line. The offensive line rarely gets exposed in Miami because there's rarely occasions where they're not moving forward or moving horizontally. And there's not, a lot of occasions where there's just a pass rush on 3rd and 8 and they're getting wrecked. So a lot of these guys are not individually exposed for, in my opinion, the frauds that the Finns have on the line. Aaron Brewer was signed to replace Connor Williams. Aaron Brewer is not a good pass protector, but in Miami, he could be a really good player because his strength is run blocking. He can move really well in the zone scheme, and he won't be asked to pass block a lot. So he could be a good player. Robert Jones is serviceable with the Dolphins. He's probably not serviceable on many other teams. Austin Jackson has never really proven to be any good, but he's not an absolute disaster on Miami because of how quickly they get rid of the ball. Patrick Paul was drafted. Maybe he could step into the offensive line if needed. Probably when Teron Armstead undoubtedly gets injured because he misses like 6 games a year. Liam Eichenberg is no good, but he is there. And Kendall Lamb is a decent swing tackle. I thought he played well last year when given the task to do so. Isaiah Wynn has been kind of a bust from the Patriots. I don't know why he's decided to move to the guard position. I thought he was a decent tackle overall at the NFL level, but he does have good movement skills, is pretty good in the run game. But again, a guy that, was a tackle, was drafted to be a tackle, moves inside to the guard position. Not exactly ideal. So yeah, Miami is at 26 because of the scheme, because they're very effective and efficient in the angles and the run game. They're very good at moving in space and finding, those big holes for A-Shane and for Raheem Mostert. And I would say as an offensive line that run blocks, they're one of the best at laterally moving. Now, when they have to run forward and get push up the middle, they're not the best. Any time that teams would stop their horizontal attack in the run game, they really struggled, but that was very rare. And then again, in the pass game, they rarely see a lot of 3rd down and long. So that's why they're not exposed, but they're very good at getting into those RPO plays, those screen plays, and all these guys are really good athletes. When Teron Armstead is playing, they're much better, but when Teron Armstead is injured, they're much worse and they significantly drop off. You also have to think, they lost Connor Williams, they lost Robert Hunt. Those were 2 of their 3 best offensive linemen on their team. So definitely a downgrade this year, but still the scheme should keep them afloat. At number 25, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans were graded as the 25th best pass blocking unit, the 18th best run blocking unit last year. I actually really like the Titans offensive line compared to last year because first, they have a proven coach in Callahan coming to town from the Cleveland Browns, who was coaching arguably the best offensive line over the past 3 or 4 years. And he's going to take his expertise and upgrade the Titans. And then they have a lot of really raw talents. They've got 1st round pick Peter Skoronski, 1st round pick Jason Latham, a top 10 center from a year ago, Lloyd Cushenberry, who they signed to a nice hefty contract. Even Nicholas Petit was a 2nd round pick, I think, once upon a time, and he could be maybe molded into something. They did add Charles out of the Commanders, Christian from the Browns, and the previous, where Callahan was previously, so there's some familiarity there. Daniel Brunskill, I think, is also an underrated guard / tackle who has some hybrid ability as well. So yeah, I think the Titans could be one of those sneaky good offensive lines, depending on how good is J.C. Latham as a rookie. We don't necessarily know, especially Alabama tackles, how good they'll be early, in their NFL career. But he is a physical freak show, and he should be able to move people in the run game. Peter Skoronski already proved as a rookie that he was a good player, but he could potentially ascend to becoming a great player in this system. Lloyd Cushenberry is good, and I think he really solidifies the interior, especially in pass protection. And like I said, Daniel Brunskill is very, very solid, and you're not really going to be let down by his play. Plus, they added a layer of depth. So I think the Titans, yeah, they were like one of the worst pass blocking units last year, if not the worst pass blocking unit. They had terrible tackles. They could not pass protect to save their life. But with improved personnel at center and left tackle, with improved coaching, this unit should definitely take a step forward this year. At number 24, the Arizona Cardinals, a team and an offensive line that I desperately wanted to upgrade on this list. They did have the 17th best pass blocking unit and the 26th best run blocking unit. But this is another one where I'm like, how did they have the 26th best run blocking unit? I mean, James Cook had a career season. They, were a team that really moved a lot of people in the run game, especially later in the year. Maybe it was an early in the year type of thing. I'm not exactly sure where this grade comes from, given that they really, I mean, watching them, I thought they were one of the best run blocking units in the league, honestly. So to me, I think really the weakness for them is they have a left tackle in Paris Johnson Jr. who played right last year. He's being asked to move to the left. He was a high first round pick from a year ago. He was okay as a rookie, but definitely needs to be better if they want to get the most out of that draft pick. I think their interior is relatively weak. Froholt is not the best center. He's definitely below average center. Evan Brown is more of a center, in my opinion, than a guard, but he could be expected to play left guard. Elijah Wilkinson, if Evan Brown doesn't play left guard, Elijah Wilkinson could play left guard, and he's been like a replaceable level guard throughout his entire career. Will Hernandez is, I think, a pretty underrated player, maybe even the most underrated player on the Cardinals team. And Jonah Williams was signed from the Bengals to replace DJ Humphries. He's going to play right. Paris Johnson's going to play left. Maybe that helps Paris Johnson playing at his more natural position from Ohio State. And Jonah Williams is definitely a better right tackle than a left tackle. We've seen him struggle at left tackle, play pretty well at right tackle. So I like the line, especially in the run game. I think they're very athletic, very well coordinated in the run game. They can pretty much do everything, but they're especially good in zone blocking. They've got good depth. I think I really like the depth of this offensive line. Calvin Beachum is a veteran tackle. Elijah Wilkinson is a veteran guard. Isaiah Adams and Christian Jones were two picks in the draft that I really like, especially Christian Jones out of Texas. I wouldn't be shocked if he became a starter once upon a time later in his career. So yeah, the Cardinals, very athletic. I think super underrated in their run department, and look out for that this year with Kyler Murray and James Conner going to work. But I think the lack of proven entities on the line, especially with some new faces, it kind of causes their ranking to be a little bit lower. And the interior is probably overall one of the weaker ones in the NFL, the less proven pass blocking units in the NFL. So at number 24, the Cardinals. At number 23, it's probably shocking to see the Baltimore Ravens at number 23. Their pass blocking was second last year. Their run blocking was sixth. But you have to understand that they had an entirely different offensive line last year. They had Morgan Moses at right tackle, who graded as a top 10 tackle in the NFL. They had John Simpson, who signed with the Jets as well, who is a beast in the run game. And I think they had another guard Kevin Zeitler, who was a borderline Pro Bowler and graded as the 15th best guard in the NFL, right? So now what they're featuring is 3 new starters, 3 relatively unproven starters and players in Andrew Voorhees at left guard, Ben Cleveland at right guard, and probably Roger Rosengarten, who was a draft pick from Notre Dame, at right tackle. Patrick McCarry is also there, who's a pretty good swing tackle, but they like to use him in 3 tackle formations for the running game. Ronnie Stanley is also a injury waiting to happen. He's basically a walking injury each and every year. He's a very good player when he plays, but he is a walking injury. Tyler Linderbaum is an excellent center, and I think he'll ascend to being an elite player this year. Like, he's very, very good, but probably could be elite this year and definitely helps their running game for sure. He's super athletic. But yeah, this is not even close to the top 10 offensive line that they featured last year that enabled Lamar Jackson to be the MVP of the NFL, that enabled them to run the football despite a lackluster running back group. Now, maybe Derrick Henry is able to overcome that because he's a Hall of Fame running back. Maybe Lamar overcomes that because he's the most elusive quarterback in the league. But this is certainly an offensive line for the Ravens, who always have good big people on their team. This is an offensive line that is very, very I think underrated in terms of nobody's talking about how bad the line could be in comparison to last year. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of any NFL team right now that has a lot of question marks to it at number 23. At number 22, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I love Tristan Wirfs. I think Tristan Wirfs is one of the best football players in the NFL, period. Since he's come into the NFL, he is a phenomenal player, right? Like, he can do no wrong in my eyes. He's an athletic freak. He moves really well, and he's one of the most proficient pass protectors in the NFL. Otherwise, the line, the guards are definitely like one of the weakest duos in football. Ben Bredesen, who played for the Giants previously, I believe, was not great for them. And Cody Mock, who was a rookie last year, I think he was a second-round pick, struggled as a rookie, but he could improve. The tackles in the center are pretty good. Luke Gedeke actually had a huge year last year. He was way better than I ever would have thought, given that he was absolutely horrendous in his rookie season. Like, they couldn't even play him. Like, he was getting whooped, but he was playing guard, right? They switched him to right tackle last year, and he played really, really well. That was the position he was actually drafted at. So they do have a good tackle duo, and they have, in my opinion, like the next Tyler Linderbaum type of center. Like, Graham Barton out of Duke is going to be a stud from day one, and he's going to instantly help their run game, which their run game has been pathetic in the past couple of years. They've been like 32nd in yards per attempt because they can't block. Like, ever since losing Ryan Jensen to injury and then retirement, they have not been able to open up holes and get push on the offensive line. They were 32nd in yards per attempt last year and the year previous, right? So now they get Graham Barton, who's a really good run blocker. I think overall really good athlete. He's going to really help them get some push, get some movement in the offensive line. Robert Hainsey has been really bad as a center, but he's kind of one of those guys that can play any position in a pinch if you really need him to. And he's a good sixth lineman to kind of have on your team, right? They were 8th in pass blocking last year and 29th in run blocking. I think they were 8th in pass blocking because their tackles are so good, and they can obviously slide a lot of the pressure away from Tristan Wirfs, right? Like, Tristan Wirfs can handle anybody one-on-one in the NFL, so they can just give Luke Gedeke some help or give the interior some help, whatever it may be. So that allows them to be a very good pass blocking unit for Baker Mayfield. Also, with what they were able to do in pass protection through play action really helps. But it's the run game that could really upgrade this line into becoming like a top half offensive line in the NFL. At number 21, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are at number 21, and this is very weird for me to say because the Cowboys have been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL for like a decade probably. At this point, they're a little bit shaky in the mid Tony Romo years, but once we hit like 2014, I can't really recall an offensive line for the Cowboys that has been this bad on paper. Like, this is the worst Cowboys offensive line that I can recall in a while. Tyler Guyton is a rookie left tackle that they drafted in the first round. He has potential, but we don't know how good he is. We have no idea. And personally, the film to me wasn't my favorite. I definitely think he lacks a lot of technical prowess. He's got a lot of athleticism, good feet, but I thought his anchor in terms of taking on power rushers was really weak. So I'd be looking out for that. Terrence Steele at right tackle was by far their worst offensive lineman last year. He was horrendous. Like, at times he was getting absolutely whooped. I think I recall one of the Eagles games. He just couldn't stop holding people. So Terrence Steele needs to play better than he did last year. He actually did play well in 2022. So that's something to maybe think about. But he was really bad last year. Tyler Smith and Zach Martin are arguably the best guard duo in the NFL, if not the best guard duo in the NFL. But everyone else on the line is really, really poor or like unproven. Brock Hoffman at center has never really played, so we don't know how good he is. Cooper Beebe was drafted. He could be good, but again, he's a rookie. Tyler Guyton, rookie, don't really know. Terrence Steele, bad last year. but we've seen him play well before. So Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, excellent players. Zach Martin is getting older though, right? His Hall of Fame career. I believe I saw a stat the other day, has more Pro Bowls than penalties in his NFL career, which is insane. But don't sleep on Tyler Smith. He is one of the best guards in the NFL. They were 11th in pass blocking, 13th in run blocking last year, maybe a little bit worse than you would have expected. But they lost Tyron Smith. They lost Tyler Biadasz, right? Those are huge pieces to lose. And that's also cohesion that you lose as well. And you're replacing them not with proven veterans, but with rookies or inexperienced players. So at number 21, the Dallas Cowboys. At number 20, the Houston Texans. The Texans were the 19th graded pass blocking unit and the 20th graded run blocking unit. Laramie Tunsil is an elite left tackle. He's one of the at least 10, probably 5 best tackles in the NFL. Other than that, I think you have to say that this line is suspect in some areas. Shaq Mason is still a very good player. Has played for the Patriots, the Bucs, and now the Texans. Once again, went to his third team and proved that he could still ball, especially in the run game. He is a very good player. He is a good power player, in my opinion. Titus Howard has been up and down throughout his career. They asked him to play some guard last year. It didn't exactly go very well. He got injured, right? Howard is a better right tackle, in my opinion, has shown that he can be a very good player at this spot. And if he does hold it down on the right side of the line, that is going to exponentially increase this line's like overall ability. Because, and probably CJ Stroud too. Because if Titus Howard is good, you've got Laramie Tunsil on the other side. You've got Shaq Mason helping him to the right. Like, sure, you might have an underwhelming left guard or center, but both of these guys, Kendrick Green was a first-round pick, and Juice Scruggs was a second-round pick, right? So you've got an elite left tackle, a good right guard, a right tackle that is kind of an X factor, and then a first-round pick and a second-round pick. If they can figure this thing out, because last year people will forget the Texans were like the most beat-up offensive line in the NFL by a long margin. So we don't really necessarily know how good the line is when they come together. They do have Jared Patterson, who played center for them last year. He comes off the bench. And Blake Fisher was drafted in the second round out of Notre Dame, I believe. So if Titus Howard does struggle or gets hurt again, Blake Fisher could probably plug in there and play pretty well. I do like what Nick Caserio did in terms of increasing the depth of the offensive line, because it's definitely an area that needed some increasing of depth last year. So yeah, a line that I think is kind of unproven, but when you look at the individual talents, you could see a lane for them to really become a very good unit led by an elite left tackle. At number 19, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers were the 14th best pass blocking unit and the 32nd run blocking unit in the NFL last year. Now, why do I have them in the top 20? Because they could have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL, with Joe Alt being drafted out of Notre Dame. Joe Alt is, I think he's going to be really good right away. So, like, he's one of those prospects that you just feel like right away should be really, really good. Now, it is harder to be really, really good at tackle than it is at center or guard, but I have belief in him. Left tackle, right side, doesn't really matter. Rashawn Slater, I think, is already like a top 10 tackle in the NFL. And whenever he's been on the field, he's kind of proven that. The interior is not the best, but I actually think that with the new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, Zion Johnson will probably improve his play. And Trey Pipkins, it looks like he's going to move to the interior. He's been an okay tackle throughout his career. Bradley Bozeman is a good player inside this system. He's not good in, other systems, but in this system, he has been at times a top 10 center in the NFL. He replaces Corey Linsley, who had some health concerns. So this is a line that, because their tackles are so good, and because I have belief in the scheme of the run game from Greg Roman, I expect them to be a top 20 line in the NFL. Now, where it could go wrong is the interior is not the best on paper, and Joe Alt could certainly have rookie struggles. But I expect it to be a much improved unit in the run game, especially this year, and I'd expect the tackles to be able to hold it down for Justin Herbert in pass protection. At number 18, a much improved offensive line, the Carolina Panthers, who graded as the 27th pass blocking unit and the 28th run blocking unit from a year ago. Ekwonu and Moton are their tackles. On paper, a really good duo. But Taylor Moton has been one of the best Panthers, period, for like the last 5 or 6 years. He's a really good player. Ekwonu has been up and down throughout his NFL career so far as a high first-round pick a couple of years ago. He is a better run blocker. So I want to see him be more involved as a straight-ahead monster in the running game. If they get him more involved in that facet of the game, I could see him really taking steps forward in confidence and just overall, helpfulness for this offensive line. Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt were new additions to the guard position. Robert Hunt is one of the best guards in the NFL. He was signed to like $100 million contract from the Miami Dolphins. Very athletic. You might recall the offensive lineman that caught a pass on the Dolphins. That was him. He's very athletic, very versatile, holds it down at tackle or guard. Damian Lewis is a power blocker. And all of a sudden, the Panthers could be a very scary team when they run to the left. If they run the ball to the left with Ekwonu and Lewis, they could be very scary in that facet. And Austin Corbett is their center. He's been good in the past for the Rams, but that's the Rams, a team that kind of take guys off the street and make them pretty productive as offensive linemen. I kind of do wonder, he's definitely the weakness of this offensive line. I kind of do wonder how he'll fare on this line. Now, the one question I have is, Austin Corbett has previously been a good player in zone systems. Damian Lewis is more of a power player, although he's played in a zone scheme, I guess. And Robert Hunt, I guess, could play in anything, but he's played more in zone scheme. I just kind of wonder if this is like a mix mash of different linemen that are not equipped to play in the same sort of style. And that's kind of my biggest question about them, on top of like, how do they come together? How does Ekwonu progress? How does Austin Corbett play? Those are my questions. But individually speaking, especially 4 of them, this could be a really good line and could really help Bryce Young. I especially think that they will hold up at the guard position in pass protection this year. So that will definitely help Bryce Young, who's a smaller guy who needs that pocket clean in the inside. So at number 18, Carolina, very much improved. I'm really looking forward to watching them. At number 17, an up-and-coming line, the Chicago Bears, who graded as the 23rd best pass blocking unit, the 23rd best run blocking unit. Braxton Jones at left tackle has been an unsung hero for them. A great diamond find in the draft. Tevin Jenkins has been excellent since moving to the guard position. Ryan Bates hopefully solidifies center. Nate Davis is their right guard. The Titans, from the Titans, they signed him last year. He was pretty good for them in year number 1. And Darnell Wright was a first-round pick, not from the Titans, but from Tennessee. Darnell Wright, I really liked coming out of the draft. I think he'll only progress in year number 2. Coleman Shelton is also there for a backup center. They have a little bit of a competition between Ryan Bates and Shelton there. So we'll see which one comes out on top. But this is a line that I think is really young. Even Nate Davis, who's already experienced 5 years in the NFL, I think he's only 27 or 28. So he's the oldest member of the line. Everybody else is in their mid to early 20s. So they could really grow together. And obviously they have to be athletic because they've got to be able to track Caleb Williams. And they've got to be able to hold up in protection because Caleb Williams loves to buy time. So I think this could be a line where they actually maybe struggle in sacks and things like that because Caleb just holds the ball so long. But Justin Fields did the exact same thing. So they're kind of experienced in this area. I think they're actually really potentially pretty darn good in the run game, especially when it comes to their guards, Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins. And again, this is just a young line that's really, really growing together. And I think this year they could take a huge step forward in their ability. So at number 17, the Chicago Bears. At number 16, another young offensive line that has a ton of potential, but still very unproven, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were 31st in pass blocking last year, but 11th in run blocking, and that showed up pretty clearly in their statistics. They were actually a good run team last year. The reason I believe in the Steelers' offensive line is Arthur Smith is their new offensive coordinator. Everywhere he goes, the offensive line plays well, from Tennessee to Atlanta. So I think they'll be good in that area, especially in the run game. And they've got a lot of athletes. Broderick Jones is huge, and he can move. Isaac Seumalo, formerly of the Eagles, was one of the best run blockers in the league and still is. Zach Frazier, the wrestler coming out of, college, really, I think could solidify that center position. James Daniels, good player at right guard, and Troy Fontenot, who has some of the best feet that we've ever seen from a college prospect on the offensive line. So, I think that the tackles are super athletic, high profile, first round picks. That's very promising. The guards, one of the low-key best duos in football with Seumalo and Daniels, and it really comes down to, okay, how good is the rookie center in Zach Frazier? But the biggest thing for me with the Steelers is, how good will their tackles be as pass protectors? That's what scares me. I think they're going to be good in the run game. Straight ahead, they're going to be very effective. So I think they're really going to run the ball a lot this year, and they're going to utilize a lot of play action, which should help their offensive line pass protect, especially with extra people in protections for Russell Wilson. But Jones and Fontenot being young at tackle, you could see some flaws and some deficiencies in pure drop back passing situations. So that's my concern. If I didn't have that concern, I'd put them even higher because they're so athletic and they're a bunch of beasts. But I think they're going to be pretty one-dimensional. Very good in the run game, pretty suspect in the pass game. At number 15, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are another line that I think is heavily slept on entering 2024. Colton Miller has solidified himself as a consistent top 10 tackle in the NFL. They drafted Jackson Powers-Johnson, who many thought was the best center in the draft. And he might play guard. I think he could do it. He's very powerful, very good hands. We'll see, though. Andre James was graded as the 9th best center in football last year. Dylan Parham was a really good draft pick last year and played well as a rookie. Munford Jr. is more of a power player, so you do wonder if they go to zone. Maybe he could struggle a little bit more, but he was pretty good again last year. He was a top 30 tackle in the NFL. So across the board, they rather have very high-end draft picks, guys that have played well as young players, or solidified good players at their position like Colton Miller and Andre James. They also, what I like about this line is 13th in pass blocking, 14th in run blocking from a year ago. They were good last year, but they also have depth. Andres Pete from New Orleans, he can play tackle or he can play guard. He started, I think, at left tackle last year for the Saints and played fine. Cody Whitehair has played center in the NFL pretty consistently at, a replacement level, but he actually has had very good seasons in his past. He might be washed, but as a 6th and 7th lineman on your team, you could do much worse. So I look at the Raiders offensive line and I say, they've got depth. They've got young players that should ascend like Munford and Parham. They've got a young guy that I like out of the draft, Jackson Powers-Johnson. I think they could be really good in the run game, especially given that interior trio. And Colton Miller definitely holds it down at left tackle. And if Munford does struggle, Andres Pete could definitely come in there and play well. Or if Jackson Powers-Johnson is not ready to play guard at the NFL level, maybe they could move Cody Whitehair there or Andres Pete there or Dylan Parham. So they just have a lot of different answers to the test. So that's what I really like about the Raiders. And they were very solid last year as well. They'll be an angry power running team though, for sure. At number 14, the Denver Broncos, low-key one of the better offensive lines last year, according to PFF. 5th best in pass blocking, 4th best in run blocking. Garrett Bowles at left tackle, Ben Powers at left guard, Luke Wattenberg at center, Quinn Miners at right guard, and Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. 4 of those players are pretty solidified as good players. Garrett Bowles, every season that he's on the field, is a good player. A top end, I'd say at least top half tackle in the NFL. Ben Powers is one of my underrated favorite guards in football. Quinn Miners is a top end guard in the NFL, one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Mike McGlinchey was signed to a huge contract, was very inconsistent in San Francisco, might have just had his best season in the NFL for Denver. And Luke Wattenberg is the question, where he replaces what they had previously, a top 10 center, so I feel like Denver, if they would have had the same center, I probably would have put them in the top 10, but I don't know. We don't really know what the center is going to be, and the center is really important, to a lot of different things, right? So I feel like, Bowles is getting a little bit older. Mike McGlinchey is very inconsistent. I do love the guards, though, and I do understand that Sean Payton is excellent out of building good offensive lines. So that's where I have the faith that they'll at least remain a top half unit in the NFL. I think they'll be better in the running game than they will be in the passing game because McGlinchey has always been good there. He's been consistent in that manner. And Powers and Miners are good in the run game as well. So I think they'll be better in the run game than the pass game, but they're a top half offensive line in my opinion. At number 13, the San Francisco 49ers, the best run blocking offensive line in the NFL last year, according to PFF. That's no surprise. Kyle Shanahan coaches it. And the pass blocking unit was actually really below average for their standard. Trent Williams is obviously awesome, but the rest of the offensive line had their moments of struggles in pass protection, right? Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, John Feliciano, and Colton McKivitz. Now, the thing that actually makes me believe that this line will be better than last year is the cohesion. So nobody has left. Colton McKivitz will get another year as a starter at right tackle. John Feliciano comes back after having an excellent season, perhaps the best of his NFL career at right guard. Jake Brendel and Aaron Banks will have another year to build together at left guard and center. And they did add a bit of depth. Chris Hubbard comes in as a backup tackle, who's been a pretty solid swing tackle throughout his NFL career. And they also drafted Puny, who I think could be a starter right away if they need him to on the interior of the line. So the Niners, obviously, we know that the angles they take, the power they play with, right? Just the overall proficiency of their running game and the detail of their running game allows them to consistently be one of the best run blocking units in the NFL. They are all pretty good athletes too. But in pass protection, it's the anchor. It's the ability to have that power in terms of the hands that they do struggle at times. But because I think they have so much more experience together and cohesion together that they didn't have last year, I think that will help them become a better pass blocking unit this year and still an elite run blocking unit in 2024. At number 12, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills offensive line, I think, is super underrated. Last year, it had a good year, 8th in pass blocking, 17th in run blocking. Now, obviously, they're aided by Josh Allen's ability to escape sacks and create time by himself. But Deion Dawkins is low-key one of the best tackles in the NFL. Connor McGovern moves to the center position. David Edwards could potentially move to the guard position. Osiris Torrance was a good rookie for them at guard, and Spencer Brown had the best season of his career. They also signed Collins, former Cowboy and Bengal, who was a disaster in Cincy, but a good player in Dallas. So you wonder maybe he could be a good third tackle for them potentially as depth, but kind of a disaster last year and the year previous. So the Bills, they usually have good depth. They usually have interchangeable players at a few of these spots, but I just thought the way that they really played as a run blocking unit at the end of last year was excellent. They were moving people around. I think that they've kind of found their style, which I think is more zone-based. But with McGovern and Edwards on the inside, I think they'll thrive. Like, I think David Edwards was a player that in LA with the Rams in zone-based running schemes was very, very good. So I think he'll be good at left guard. And Connor McGovern, I think their plan was always to have him to replace Mitch Morse. So I believe that they made the right decision here with that. Spencer Brown could maybe take another step forward as their right tackle, and all of a sudden they have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL. And Osiris Torrance should take an obvious step forward entering year number 2 as a pretty high-end prospect from a year ago coming out of Florida. So yeah, they did a good job last year. It was probably Josh Allen's best offensive line last season of his entire career. And they're going to be counted on because the Bills don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. So they're going to have to pass block their butts off, and they're going to have to move people in the run game to get this offense moving. So I believe that they're going to be a top half offensive line for sure, and maybe even potentially jump into the top 10 in 2024. At number 11, the Los Angeles Rams, probably the biggest reason that I believe even post Aaron Donald, the Rams will still be a team that's in that playoff race in the NFC, because I think they improved their offensive line this offseason. They added Jonah Jackson, a very good guard from the Detroit Lions, to go alongside Kevin Dotson, who was one of the best guards in the NFL last year. So they have now one of the most formidable guard duos in football, which is essential protecting Matthew Stafford because he's a pocket quarterback. Can't have those guards pushed back. Those guards, they create, the stiffness of the line. They create that ability for quarterbacks to step up and manipulate the pocket. The tackles are those guys that kind of hold the edges, right? But I think that Havenstein has been good for so long. I don't expect to drop off anytime soon until he retires. And Jackson was not bad at left tackle last year. He was actually graded as a top 45 tackle in the NFL, which was a shocker to many people. Steve Avila played well as a rookie guard, but he'll be moving to center, which I think is fine. I think he can play well at that position as well. I think he was actually drafted to be a center, if I'm not mistaken, and he played out of position last year, but I could be wrong. And then Joe Noteboom is a good third tackle to have on your team. Every time he's played fine. He's had some struggles, like the first game of 2022 against Von Miller, I believe. But other than that, he's come back from that game and played well as an NFL pro. So they were 20th in pass blocking last year and 5th in run blocking. So they're always going to be a good run blocking unit because Sean McVay and the scheme and the way that they tutor it and the way that they teach it, it's always very detailed and effective. So this scheme is very sound. Pass blocking, sometimes, just like the Niners, they struggle in pure pass blocking situations. But I think they have better overall players than a team like the Niners, other than Trent Williams at left tackle. Like Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson are very good guards, probably in most schemes. And Rob Havenstein is just a good right tackle, period. So they're good individually as well. So I could see the Rams being a top 10 offensive line this year. It kind of comes down to their play at center and left tackle to kind of determine that. How well does Jonah Jackson fit in? I think he'll fit in very well. Ben Johnson and Sean McVay tend to do similar things in their run games. And Jackson is a good pass blocker. So at number 11, the Los Angeles Rams. Now entering the top 10, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are at number 10, the third best pass blocking unit, the 10th best run blocking unit, both top 10 last year. Now, I love their tackles, Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, but their guards and their center, their interior in general, is a little bit iffy. Garrett Bradbury has never proven to be an above average center. He has kind of disappointed in his NFL career, given where he was drafted. Ed Ingram had a solid season last year, and Dalton Reisner is probably the definition of solid. But the fact that they have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL with Darrisaw and O'Neill really allows them to be a good pass blocking unit each and every year. And their interior does a good job in the scheme that they play, which is, again, that Sean McVay kind of Los Angeles Ram, San Francisco 49er, Shanahan kind of inspired running game. They could improve as a run blocking unit overall, but with Aaron Jones, I think they're really going to be thankful for adding a running back of that talent, because I think they were opening up enough lanes to be successful. It was just that they didn't really have the running back to take advantage. So I could see Aaron Jones having a good year as long as he stays healthy. And then again, like, they play in that dome, right? So it's important to have good tackles that can effectively be athletic and move and be able to take on those finesse speed rushers, because there's constant, pop off the ball in the dome on the fast track. So yeah, the Vikings are a very good O-line. I really don't have any issues with them outside of, like, the interior is kind of like just okay, and it's not great, but the tackles are so good. The scheme is solid. They're good in pass protection. I think they're okay in run blocking. and they're really good in play action scenarios. And at times, when Darisaw and O'Neal are both playing at a high level, they're pretty hard to get around. So at number 10, the Vikings. At number 9, the Cincinnati Bengals. One of the offensive lines that I'm most excited to watch in 2024 is the Bengals. They added Trent Brown to the right tackle position, which he was the 11th best tackle in the NFL last year, according to PFF. And he was actually second in terms of solo blocks. So on the island blocks, the highest percentage of those blocks, Tyron Smith was number 1. Trent Brown was number 2. Trent Brown is capable of being a Pro Bowl level tackle. It's just a matter of motivation and how good of shape he is in. But I've witnessed it as a Patriots fan. The guy can really play at a high level in the pass game and the run game. He's an excellent fit for what the Bengals want to be, which is a power downhill rushing attack and, an angry, big offensive line. And Orlando Brown is exactly that on the left side. And Amarius Mims, who they drafted in the first round, is an excellent third tackle to bring in, right? He can play right or left. If Trent Brown goes down, he can easily step up. And he is also a physical monster, huge, very tall. So you see the vision for this offensive line, which I really like, where they're going to be angry downhill in the run game. And they're going to be, a team that they're just too big. Like, it's hard to get around them. If you're a smaller defensive line, you're going to struggle against this offensive line because if you're a smaller defensive line, you're going to struggle against this offensive line because of how powerful. If they get hands on you, you're in trouble. The one weakness I'd say is Volson at left guard, although he did have his best season of his career last year. Ted Karras and Alex Kappa are good players at center and guard. Very tough, physical, nasty players as well. Just love the makeup of the overall identity of the offensive line. Even if they were 22nd in pass blocking, 22nd in run blocking last year, and they basically swapped up Jonah Williams for Trent Brown and they added Amarius Mims, it doesn't feel like they really did a ton to upgrade. But honestly, I just really like how this line has gained experience together, cohesion together. Joe Burrow being back at quarterback will definitely help them with protections. And the overall offensive line, I think, it just has an identity of power and nastiness that I really like. And I think that goes a long way. At number 8, the New York Jets offensive line, which is a shocker to see here, but because they were 30th in pass blocking, 27th in run blocking. But I don't think people are taking it seriously. This offensive line really improved this offseason. They added Tyron Smith at left tackle, who's one of the best tackles in the NFL still. He had one of the best seasons of his career last year. John Simpson, they added at left guard. Elijah Vera Tucker, they get back at right guard. Morgan Moses, they upgraded at right tackle, who was a top 11 tackle according to PFF last year. And Olu Fashanu was drafted to be that potential, replacement of Tyron Smith down the road, but also could slide in for Tyron Smith if he undoubtedly misses 4 games, which he usually does. So they've got good depth. They've got a mix of young and old with Elijah Vera Tucker, Joe Tippmann, with guys like Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. They've got guys that have played on multiple teams successfully, like Morgan Moses. As long as they stay healthy, there's no reason they shouldn't be a top 10 offensive line in the league, especially in the run game, where they were excellent last year near the end of the year, in my opinion, for Breece Hall. And with a running back like Breece Hall, you just give him a little inch of daylight, he'll make something happen. But the biggest priority is that they hold it down and they protect Aaron Rodgers, because he's not the same mover, and mobility is definitely a question about him. But with Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, I feel pretty good about it. And then you've got Fashanu if anybody does get injured. So yeah, Joe Tippmann to me is the biggest question, but he showed some upside last year. So at number 8, the Jets. At number 7, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs' offensive line is consistently good because they're well coached and they have one of the best interiors, if not the best interior offensive line in the NFL. The tackles, though, are massive question marks. Jawan Taylor is just flat out not a very good player, in my opinion. And Morris is going to be expected to be their new left tackle. Donovan Smith is still a free agent. He started in the Super Bowl and all season for them last year. They did also draft Kingsley out of BYU, if I'm not mistaken. He's a project, though. I wouldn't expect him to play anytime soon. But the combination of Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith on the interior of any offensive line makes you one of the best offensive lines in the league, on top of Andy Reid's prowess for understanding offensive linemen, getting the most out of young offensive linemen, and really teaching these guys to play well and together. So, yeah, 7th in pass blocking last year, 16th in run blocking, definitely best in pass blocking, especially in the inside. But man, there's times where they can win a game by running the ball because of their offensive line and because of their guards, Joe Thuney, Trey Smith, and the nastiness of Creed Humphrey. But the tackles at times also really struggle in terms of keeping the edges and protecting Patrick Mahomes. There are games where Patrick Mahomes is running for his life, and I think that's because the tackles are a pretty weak duo overall. But that's just kind of the way they build their team at this point. They kind of understand that Mahomes is good at manipulating and moving and escaping from edge pressure, but he struggles with interior pressure. So at number 7, the Kansas City Chiefs. At number 6, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are just one of those teams that's a factory of offensive lines. They just consistently put together good offensive lines no matter who is on it, and that makes me believe they'll once again be good in 2024. 10th in pass blocking, 23rd in run blocking a year ago. Rasheed Walker, kind of an average, maybe even going to ascend this year at left tackle. He's young. He should get better. Elfton Jenkins is one of the best guards, most versatile offensive linemen in football at left guard. Josh Myers is, again, not great, but not bad at center. At right guard, Jordan Morgan is very exciting out of Arizona, first-round pick, very athletic. I think he fits the Packers, especially in the run game, very well. And Zach Tom is a really good player at right tackle or pretty much any position on the offensive line. They also have guys like Newman, Ryan, and Dillard who have played snaps in the NFL as starters. So they've got depth and good athletes to replace as well. So the Packers are not necessarily one of those lines that you look at them individually and they wow you, like they have Pro Bowler after Pro Bowler after Pro Bowler. No, this is not like the 2014 Cowboys. But when they come together and they play as a whole and they play within this scheme under Matt LaFleur, they just have it. It's hard to explain, but they execute everything at a high level and they run the ball well every year. Their pass protection, especially from play action plays, is superb. And even when they do get in trouble, Jordan Love has enough of that individual talent where he can help them out just a little bit when they do leak. So the Packers are just a factory. They just understand offensive line. They understand how to draft it. They understand how to build it. They understand how to mold it. And that's why I believe this young line will come together in 2024 as one of the best in the NFL. Entering the top 5. At number 5, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts offensive line is without a doubt top 5 in my opinion. This top 5 is a step above the rest. The Colts have a very good line. Last year, 6th in pass blocking, 8th in run blocking. Bernard Raymond at left tackle had an excellent year, number 2. Quentin Nelson is one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, in my opinion. Ryan Kelly at center is one of the best centers in the NFL. Will Fries is like the underrated. People think he's kind of like the deficient element of the offensive line, but he's actually not bad. And right tackle Braden Smith is one of the best right tackles in the NFL. And then you combine that with the Shane Steichen running scheme that he brought from Philadelphia and kind of that Philadelphia togetherness of the offensive line and the teaching of that style, that system. The athletic kind of running game that they have, and just the consistency of the teaching of the pass protection. And you've got a good offensive line, especially 3 really awesome players, 1 ascending left tackle, and 1 player that might be a little bit underrated. I don't really see any flaws with this unit. I think they'll be one of the best, especially in terms of running the ball this year. And Jonathan Taylor should really thrive running the ball. So at number 5, the Indianapolis Colts. Also, too, Anthony Richardson is going to help, too, in the run game because of his presence in terms of those read option elements, which should only help the Colts as well because teams are going to have to play on their toes a little bit conservatively, which allows the Colts to attack them. So at number 5, the Colts. At number 4, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are here. They had great coaching in the past. Callahan has left. That makes me a little bit worried, which is maybe for a slight downgrade. But they're so individually talented on top of having pretty good depth that I can't rank them any lower than number 4. Last year, they had a ton of injuries. They graded as the 18th best pass blocking unit, 21st in run blocking, mostly due to the injuries, I think. But Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin are their tackle duo. I think it's the most underwhelming element of the offensive line. Jack Conklin has been good in the past for the Titans and the Browns, but he got injured last year, like almost right away. Jedrick Wills has not lived up to the expectations. Imagine if they would have drafted like Tristan Wirfs instead. Wow. But, you know, DeJuan Jones can also come off the bench and be an absolute stud in pass protection too. And he was a late draft pick last year, but he entered right away and was basically no loss for the Browns. Bitonio, Teller, and Pocic, though, are one of the best interior trios in the NFL. Probably like second, if I were to say. They're an excellent interior trio. Only behind the Chiefs, I'd probably put the Browns. Bitonio and Teller are absolute beasts in the run game. And when Nick Chubb is there, they are one of the most feared running games in the NFL because of how well those guys get out in space, and they're nasty. They're athletic. Teller at times has been borderline dominant. Bitonio is extremely consistent, and Pocic, ever since coming to Cleveland, has been one of the best centers in the NFL. So at number 4, the Cleveland Browns. At number 3, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons do lose Arthur Smith, but they do gain the Sean McVay style of offense under Zach Robinson, which I think will be pretty seamless in my opinion. Jake Matthews has probably been one of the most underrated tackles in the NFL. Like, he's been balling since like 2014. He's been around for a long time, and he's just been super consistent. He's never really been elite, but he's never been less than above average. Like, he's just one of those good NFL players that has played for a long time that you can always count on, and he's always healthy. Matthew Bergeron, a young guard, is a good player. Drew Dalman at center had one of the best run blocking seasons in the NFL last year. Chris Lindstrom is arguably the best guard in the NFL. And Caleb McGarry is a good, solid right tackle who they also have extended. So their pass blocking was 4th last year. Their run blocking was 7th. I am extremely excited to see what they'll be able to do with a quarterback like Cousins, who is very smart, very good at the line of scrimmage, and actually gets rid of the ball. That will only help their offensive line. On top of having a run game that is very zone-based, I think they're going to be very proficient in that run game with Bijan Robinson. They're, in my opinion, one of the best run blocking units in the league, maybe a little bit less so in pass blocking, despite what the grade said for PFF, because I think their pass blocking is a little bit aided by a lot of play action. But honestly, they're very good in all facets. So, and they've got decent depth too. At number 3, the Falcons are in the elite conversation, led by arguably the best guard, Chris Lindstrom. At number 2, the line that's probably been the best in the NFL for the past few years, the Philadelphia Eagles, 1st in pass blocking, 3rd in run blocking last year. Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, in my opinion, is probably the best tackle duo in the NFL. Lane Johnson is still one of the elite right tackles in the game. Jordan Mailata was the 3rd graded tackle in the NFL last year. Landon Dickerson was a Pro Bowler last year. Cam Jurgens replaces Jason Kelce, which is obviously the reason they moved from number 1 to number 2. You don't simply replace overnight a Hall of Fame, borderline top 3 center of all time in Jason Kelce. Tyler Steen, I think, is not quite what they used to have in terms of like Isaac Seumalo. I think he's a little bit less than that at right guard, but he's got good versatility. He's a very solid player. You know, you can count on him. I don't think he has the upside of previous, guards at this position for the Eagles, but he's solid. So I think this is like a little bit weaker than last year and the year before for the Eagles offensive line, but it's still amazing. Like, the 2022 offensive line was like one of the best I've ever seen. The 2017 offensive line was one of the best I've ever seen. And the Eagles offensive line in 2024 is not quite that level, but it's still good enough to be the 2nd best in the league because they have the best tackle duo in the league. They have a Pro Bowl level guard. And they've got young players like Cam Jurgens, who I'm excited for. So at number 2, the Eagles. And at number 1, the Detroit Lions offensive line, grading as the 12th best pass blocking unit and the second best run blocking unit last year. They had the number 1 graded center in the NFL in Frank Ragnow and the number 1 graded tackle in the NFL in Penei Sewell. So you have 2 number 1 players at their position according to PFF. Now, I'd personally put Sewell at number 2 behind Trent Williams at tackle, and I'd probably put Ragnow number 1 or number 2 at center. Kevin Zeitler replaces Jonah Jackson. Kevin Zeitler was actually probably better than Jonah Jackson last year. He's probably a more consistent pass blocker, but he is older, so they're sacrificing youth for maybe ability or skill or the right now. Graham Glasgow is just very solid no matter where he plays, center or guard. He actually had the best season of his career last year. And Taylor Decker is just, again, like kind of like that Jake Matthews type where it's like he's good. Nobody really talks about him, but he's just good. And he's always on the field and he's always playing well. That's Taylor Decker for me. He's like a top 12 tackle in the NFL as well. So they have, again, arguably, a top 3, top 4 tackle duo. They have a veteran guard duo who are coming off excellent seasons and arguably the best center in the league. You put that with a Ben Johnson rushing attack that's very diverse. The amount of different runs that they can execute, whether it be power or zone, they love duo, all that sort of stuff. They can do it all in the run game. And then they're also big, nasty, great anchors at tackle, just veteran experience on the interior. They can execute really any system at a high level, any play at a high level, right? Drop back pass, they're very good. Straight ahead run power game, they're good. Play action, they're very good. So that's what I love about the Lions and the Eagles, I would say, is they just have a very diverse kind of skill set to them. They're not really reliant on a certain run or a certain pass play or too much play action. They just get it done no matter what. And that's the true ability of a phenomenal elite offensive line. And that's the Detroit Lions. So, going over my recap here, let's go to the offensive line. Top 32. Just going quick. At number 32, the worst offensive line in the NFL, the New York G-Men. At number 31, I'm worried about the New Orleans Saints, man, especially without Ryan Ramczyk. At number 30, a line that has some young players that maybe get better, but no studs in the Seahawks. At number 29, once again, the Commanders have a line of a bunch of okay players, but no studs. At number 28, the Patriots have individual talent and some really good players like Andrews and Onwenu, but how do they adjust to a new system? At number 27, consistently underwhelming with new additions, Jacksonville. At number 26, scheme over talent, the Miami Dolphins. Can Teron Armstead stay healthy? At number 25, the Titans have really improved on paper. J.C. Latham, Lloyd Cushenberry, I expect better in 2024. At number 25, at number 24, the Arizona Cardinals are low-key one of the best run-blocking units in the NFL, but with Paris Johnson moving to the left, with a new guy on the right, with maybe an underwhelming interior, I'm not sure how good they'll be for Kyler Murray in pass protection. At number 23, the Baltimore Ravens offensive line, they lost 3 starters, and nobody has really noticed. Ronnie Stanley's always injured. Tyler Linderbaum's awesome, but I don't have much to rely on here. At number 22, Tristan Wirfs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm also excited for Graham Barton. At number 21, a new and declining Dallas Cowboy offensive line. Can Guyton step up and replace the Hall of Fame Tyron Smith? We will see. At number 20, the Houston Texans, finally healthy. Laramie Tunsil leads the way for the unit protecting C.J. Stroud. At number 19, one of the most young and promising tackle duos in football, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. At number 18, the bolstered Bryce Young O-line of Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, and the Panthers. At number 17, a young and up-and-coming line for Caleb Williams, the Chicago Bears. At number 16, a super athletic, youthful Pittsburgh Steelers line that I'm excited for. At number 15, a ton of depth and proven players in Colton Miller, Andre James. Love the Jackson Powers Johnson draft pick. The Raiders at number 15. At number 14, a very good line last year. Very good guard duo in Powers and Miners. Bowles at left, McGlinchey at right, Sean Payton's Broncos line. At number 13, the best run blocking unit from a year ago, led by Trent Williams, the San Francisco 49ers. At number 12, one of the most underrated O-lines from last year, the Buffalo Bills, who will be counted on to really get this run game started for Josh Allen and the boys. At number 11, a super improved line for Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson at guard is awesome. Number 11, the Rams. At number 10, the Minnesota Vikings featured Darrisaw and O'Neal, one of the best tackle duos in football. At number 9, one of the O-lines that is the biggest and nastiest in the NFL, probably the biggest and the nastiest offensive line in the NFL, the Brown duos, the Brown Towers. At number 9, the Cincinnati Bengals. At number 8, the New York Jets finally have an O-line. Tyron Smith comes to town. Morgan Moses, John Simpson, new additions make them top 10. At number 7, the best interior O-line in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. At number 6, the O-line factory. They just get it done each and every year, the Green Bay Packers. At number 5, Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly. They just keep doing it at a high level and an excellent run scheme. At number 4, the Cleveland Brownies. Batonio and Teller are one of the best guard duos in football. They've got good depth at tackle, and they're still going to rock even post-Callahan. At number 3, the Falcons are nasty in the run game, very athletic, and they've built together. Lindstrom, the best guard in football. The Falcons are at number 3. At number 2, the Eagles have arguably the best tackle duo in football, an excellent guard, and some young players. Cam Jurgens replaces Jason Kelsey. That's the reason they're not number 1. And at number 1, Decker and Sewell on the tackles. Ragnow, the best center in the league, arguably. And 2 veteran guards, Glasgow and Zeitler. There's nothing the Lions can't do. Those are your top 32 offensive lines in the NFL, from the worst to the best. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate anybody that was watching this live. And you could check this out on YouTube in its entirety. Gronk spike the like button if you're on YouTube and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.